Welcome to the WTR Small Cap Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Tim Gerdeman, Vice Chair and Co-founder and Chief Marketing Officer of Water Tower Research. In today's podcast episode, I'm being joined by Josh Resnik, CEO and President of FiscalNote, NYSE ticker symbol NOTE. FiscalNote uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other technologies with analytics, workflow tools, and expert research to build policy and market intelligence systems. Also joining us is my WTR equity research colleague, John Roy. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for joining today's podcast.
Great. Good to be here, Tim.
Morning, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Josh, for those listeners that don't know FiscalNote, can you please provide a quick overview of the company and your strategy?
Sure, Tim. And thanks again for having me here today. FiscalNote delivers subscription-based access to essential and proprietary regulatory data, insights, and workflow tools that we deliver through an AI-driven SaaS platform. And we do it with a combination of AI-generated intelligence and human intelligence on top of comprehensive data sets, including our own proprietary data and information. And fundamentally, what we do is we help organizations manage to regulatory risk and change. And we believe this problem of managing to that is just getting harder and harder with the increased pace of change, the increased chaos in the space. And as organizations increasingly recognize the impact that this change has on them. And we also believe that with our skills in AI, we can do more and more over time to impact much of our customers' workflow as well. So right now, our customers have a lot of workflow that can be manual and inefficient. And so leveraging our technology and AI, we can help our clients be more effective and increasingly automate much of what they do in this space. And we do this now for more than 4,000 customers, including half the Fortune 100. And a little more than half our revenue is corporates, about a quarter is public sector, and the rest is associations and NGOs.
Great. Thanks for that overview, Josh. I'll now turn the podcast over to John Roy to ask a few questions.
Thanks, Tim. So, Josh, just to kind of hit current events here, you guys have made progress on a couple fronts recently. Maybe give us some color on the EU defense and space policy vertical, and then your efforts to deleverage the debt stack.
Sure, John. So in regards to the EU defense and space policy vertical, essentially the EU is increasing its focus on defense due to the conflict in Ukraine and the US administration's indications of its expectations that EU nations will take on more responsibility for defense of Europe. So the EU Commission has added a defense and space portfolio, including a new commissioner. And European governments will be focused on developing more of their own defense capabilities as well. And so we proactively took the opportunity to expand the work we do across other areas of focus in the EU. So we track policy across many different verticals within the EU. This is an expansion for us there. And we did it because this is going to be such an impactful place for customers. So these new EU policies will dictate market opportunities for organizations. And it's also a chance for public affairs professionals who are focused on this area to drive greater value for their organizations as well, especially for those with operations in the EU. So we're excited about this launch and expansion. And again, it's another example of the fact that there's so much change now in this arena of policy and regulation. And this change drives risk for organizations, but it also drives opportunity as well. And our data and our information and analysis can be very impactful for organizations as they try to navigate it. And then in regard to deleveraging the debt stack, that's been a focus for us as we've sought to strengthen our balance sheet and accelerate the path to positive free cash flow. And we just announced the divestiture of Oxford Analytica and Dragonfly, two of our non-core assets, to Dow Jones. That divestiture enabled us to pay down our senior term loan by approximately $30 million. We've now paid off more than $100 million of that debt. And so we've taken down our senior term loan by more than 60% in about the past year through divesting non-core assets. And so we're very focused on accelerating the path to positive free cash flow. And through the operating improvements that we've made in our business and through continuing to pay down our debt, we're really accelerating that path to positive free cash flow.
Great. That sounds like some excellent steps. Now, you did just report a fourth quarter and fiscal 24 numbers not too long ago. Maybe you can give us the key takeaways from that.
Sure. So there's really three main areas to focus on there. So one is our continued expansion of adjusted EBITDA profitability. So we have made significant strides as an organization, and our company is operating vastly differently than it was just a couple of years ago. So in 2022, we had a $24.5 million adjusted EBITDA loss. We said that we would become adjusted EBITDA positive by the end of 2023, and we actually beat that by delivering our first quarter of adjusted EBITDA positive in Q3 of that year. We've now hit 6 straight quarters of adjusted EBITDA profitability. We've continued to expand that. On a year-over-year basis this year, on a pro forma basis, we'll more than double our adjusted EBITDA margin. So we're continuing to expand profitability. As I just mentioned, we're very focused on achieving free cash flow as well. So the second thing to think about is how we think about strengthening the balance sheet and accelerate that path to positive free cash flow. So we just discussed that a bit. That continues to be a focus for us. And we're going to apply the same level of discipline that we did in achieving adjusted EBITDA profitability to achieving positive free cash flow as well. The third thing for us to think about is growth. And we've been limited in the past because of challenges that we've had from a product perspective. But we've been investing in product. In January of this year, we announced the launch of our new platform, PolicyNote. PolicyNote will house all of our data, content, and analysis in a single place. And it will be very important for driving future growth. We're now in market with it. We have customers using it. We're very happy with the feedback from customers and the metrics that we're seeing. Customers are telling us they love the AI forward experience. They find it very easy to use and to find the information that's most impactful for their organization. We're looking very closely at usage metrics. We're pleased with the engagement levels that we see. We're pleased with the nature of the engagement in terms of account usage, in terms of users within accounts, in terms of the activities that we see, and so on. And so we're very excited about the progress that we've made with PolicyNote and the impact that it will have on our growth going forward. So those really are the three things. As we've built a better and more efficient organization, we're driving to positive free cash flow, and we're doing the right things to impact growth going forward.
Great, Josh. Now, one of the things you mentioned, obviously, was adjusted EBITDA is trending the right direction. How did you actually do that? Can you give us some color on what was behind that?
Sure. Thanks for asking. So it's been, it's been a significant amount of work for the organization, but what it really comes down to is focus and discipline. So we've been very disciplined in terms of how we operate. We've streamlined our organization. So we've shut down or reduced investment in unprofitable areas or areas that we don't believe are really primed for long-term growth. We've been disciplined about margins. We've streamlined management layers. So it's really been going through the entirety of how we operate as a business and the areas in which we focus. And what we've determined is that the best thing we can do is really focus on this core area of policy, regulation, and legislation that we're so deep in, where we have such a trusted relationship with 4,000 plus customers, and where we know we can drive long-term growth and market expansion. And by focusing in those areas, by being disciplined about how we do it, and by being efficient in how we apply ourselves to it, that's how we've been able to not just achieve adjusted EBITDA profitability, but continue to expand those margins. And I expect, going forward, we'll continue to find, efficiencies as we continue to improve operations. In my mind, this is a constant thing that organizations should be doing as we continue to evolve, take advantage of new opportunities, new technologies to continue to work smarter and better over time.
So interesting. So, can you give us any color on what your market is for your products? And I mean, you've talked about obviously the EU and regulatory environments getting uncertainty. Can you give us any kind of examples or any kind of color on what the market looks like for the next couple of years and kind of where things are headed?
Sure. So the way to think about the market is this. So we believe that it's something we've seen for a long time, and really the reason our company exists is because we've seen the significant impact that policy and regulatory change can have on organizations. But it's something now that really is coming to the forefront. It's no secret to anyone listening now about the impact that tariffs can have, for example, right? But it goes even beyond the headlines and into deeper regulatory issues. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're a large multinational. Let's say you're focused in the agriculture space. You have to think about sustainable farming regulations in the various countries in which you're operating. You need to think about various rules and regulations that apply to import and export of your goods. You need to think about food safety regulations. There's significant labor and employment regulations you need to think about. You probably need to think about, depending on what you do, you may need to think about nutritional restrictions or, sugar in drinks, that type of thing. And all of these regulations and rules are vastly different depending on where you operate. And think if you're a large multinational, how many countries that may come down to. But it's not just country level, it's then state level, local level, et cetera. So it gets exponentially more difficult. And then when you think about how much these things are changing over time and how difficult it is to track and keep up with it. So this is an incredibly complex problem for an organization to solve. And then if you think down to the individual level, if you run global government affairs or public affairs or legal, if you're the general counsel for one of these large multinationals, you're reporting up to your board on the risk and opportunity associated with this change. People are now realizing how impactful this is to lines of business. These problems can impact, hundreds of millions of dollars or more for an organization. So it's very impactful. And these issues are only getting more complex. They're not getting more simple. And so, from an overall market standpoint, the other thing I should mention here too, by the way, is not just large multinationals, but more and more organizations are getting drawn into it as well. So what used to be considered, you used to talk about a regulated entity, regulated industry. Well, now everything is getting impacted, right? And so it's no longer just large multinationals, it's down to mid-market and even SMBs. It's public sector entities who are trying to keep up with this change as well and understand, for example, what other jurisdictions are doing. So it's getting more and more complex. There's a greater and greater need for organizations to deal with this over time. So we feel like we're a leader in this space where the market, in a sense, is continuing to expand because you have more and more organizations getting pulled into more significant problems. The other thing to think about from a longer term standpoint comes back to product. So I mentioned our investment in product and our launch of FiscalNote earlier this year. One other reason why it becomes impactful is because by having all our data and content in one place and this ecosystem of 4,000 plus customers that we have today interacting within that space, it gives us the opportunity to continue to bring in more and more features, more and more AI technology, so leveraging generative AI, agentic AI, to solve more and more of our clients' workflow problems as well. And this is a huge area for them where today they may take the information they get from our platform and they may work with law firms, lobbying firms, public affairs firms to do a lot of manual work to then potentially react to it, plan around it, et cetera. we will be able to launch more and more AI features within PolicyNote to automate more of that workflow and increase the share of wallet that we get over time. So we believe that we're still in the early innings of where this is going, and the opportunity for us to capture this expanded market is only growing.
Yeah, it sounds like a great, a lot of runway available.
Yeah,
So
sorry, go ahead.
one of the things we talked about was the non-core products. You're sunsetting some of those divestitures, et cetera. And I know you're refocusing the business. How much of that impacted your revenue guidance for the rest of the year, 25?
Yeah, sunset revenue is not really a material component in the revenue guidance for this year. It is an essential aspect of how we're right-sizing the business and how we think about focusing on the core. So it really comes down to the importance in terms of again, how we operate, how we're disciplined in our cost controls, in our operational controls, how that contributes to accelerated operating leverage. And then as we, start to drive growth in the business, which we'll start to see the impact of PolicyNote in the second part of this year as we start to see ARR growth, and that will translate into GAAP revenue growth in 26. So, but as that starts to happen, more and more of that revenue will come to the bottom line. So, the concept of sunset revenue, not really material to the guidance this year, but is a contributing aspect to the ongoing strategy as we think about how we operate going forward.
Yeah, speaking of PolicyNote, that's your new platform. How is the migration of the existing customers to the new platform going?
Yeah, so it's going well so far. And even though we only announced PolicyNote in January of this year, we actually made it available to customers towards the end of last year. So PolicyNote has been in development for some time. We went through extensive beta testing with customers over the course of last year, and then we started to make it available at the end of last year. And we're really excited about what we've seen there so far. So I mentioned some aspects of engagement that we've seen earlier, but I'll tell you, just generally speaking, it's been overwhelmingly positive feedback for PolicyNote. Our customers we're solving problems for them in the positive in terms of enabling them to find the information they need to find more easily. But we're also addressing one of the bigger problems for them, which is this fear, uncertainty, and doubt they have over missing things that might matter to their business. And so by leveraging our AI technology to do more and more of the work for them in PolicyNote, that helps do that. And so as an example, where we're able to alert them to new bills and regulations that may impact their organization, things that they might not have thought to search for or set a keyword alert for, that's extremely powerful for them. So that aspect of the migration is going really well. The feedback that we're getting on the user experience is very strong as well in terms of ease of use. We've had cases where I can think of one off the top of my head where we had a CEO who saw a demo of the platform and insisted on getting an extra license so that they could actually interact with the platform themselves. So really good feedback on that user experience as well. And again, it gives us a lot of confidence in terms of how we expect PolicyNote to drive growth for us going forward. And the other place where we've seen actually that really positive response has been in new logo sales as well. So we've actually seen the share of ARR from corporates where they're committing to multi-years is at double the rate of what it was a year ago. So that means that as we're showing PolicyNote to these corporates, they're willing to step in and commit to multi-years at double the rate they were before. And that tells you a few things. One is, number one, they know they're going to need this for some time, right? That it's not just an immediate response to near-term volatility and change in legislation and regulation, but something they know they'll need. Another is it tells you the confidence that they have in our roadmap, right? So that they're willing to commit to multi-years. And the fact that they're doing it in a time of economic volatility tells you a lot more as well. So we're really excited about what we've seen in terms of the market response to PolicyNote.
Great. So you've talked quite a bit about positive free cash flow. Maybe just to kind of lay it on the table, what is your thinking about reaching positive free cash flow?
Sure. So we are continuing to accelerate the path to positive free cash flow. And as I mentioned before, just like we went after positive adjusted EBITDA, we're doing the same here. And this is very important to us because what we're building here is a long-term sustainable business, and positive free cash flow is an essential component of that. So we've talked about how we've been focused on managing operational discipline, how we've increased operating leverage. And so therefore, as we grow revenue, more and more cash will start to drop to the bottom line. But even just, taking that aside, we've been focused also, as we said, on managing debt, taking down our cash interest. And our other major cash expenditure is around CapEx for software development, and we've continued to manage that along with our other, streamlining and operational efforts. So we're beyond just focusing on adjusted EBITDA. We know we can do that. We know we can continue to expand those margins, and we're really focused on free cash flow next. And by the way, just as one proof point around that too, cash flow from operations in 24 was a $30 million improvement over 23. So significant change. So these are things that we're serious about doing and executing on. And I think we're doing an excellent job and making very strong progress.
Great. I'm getting to the end of my thinking here, and I know we're ending on time. So maybe one last question is, what do you think investors are currently missing with regard to FiscalNote?
Sure, John, that's a good question too. So I think really key to understand is the importance of what we do and the long-term nature of it. So, again, I do think we're clearly entering a new era with the focus on policy and regulation. This used to be something, that, we would have to explain to people about the importance of it and why it mattered. Don't have to explain that so much anymore. So, people are seeing that. They understand how impactful it is on organizations, how it impacts revenue and expense in material ways. But also just that's not going to change anytime soon. So we happen to be in a period of very heightened volatility right now. But no matter what, you're in a place where the world is so interconnected. You have more and more aspects of business operations being regulated, impacted by regulatory change. So this is something where there's just a growing and growing need for it. And then for us in particular, we've been a leader in the space. We're very well respected in terms of the data and information that we provide. And again, that includes the breadth of our data sets. So we collect data from more countries than anyone. We go deeper locally than anyone. But we also have this proprietary analysis and intelligence that we provide. So this unique mix of assets that we have, and we're incredibly trusted to provide accurate information, unbiased information, right? And only objective, valid information. That's incredibly important. And in a place where it's really important, especially in the world of AI, for people to have trust, and we have that trust. And then the other piece is that FiscalNote will drive our ability to expand further. So we know what the challenge has been from a growth perspective. It's been the legacy platforms that we have. That's why we've been investing in product. That's why we brought on a new chief product officer in September of last year. It's why we launched FiscalNote in January of this year. And we're seeing that momentum build. And so that will drive that growth going forward. And we're starting to see those proof points come in terms of those multi-year commitments, in terms of the customer engagement with the platform. So I think, sometimes when people look at FiscalNote today, they're asking those questions about, well, what about free cash flow? What about growth? These are things, the fundamental arrows are all pointing in the right direction. And we're trying to be more transparent and show more of these proof points so that people can have as much confidence in what we're doing as we do. And we're very excited about what we're building. We're very excited about the progress that we've been making. And we're really excited about the long-term opportunity.
Great. Thank you for joining us today, Josh Resnik, CEO and President of FiscalNote, NYSE, ticker symbol NOTE. And thanks to my equity research colleague as well, John Roy, for joining us. Finally, a special thanks to the producer and editor of the podcast, my WTR colleague, Joe Brunetto. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, as well as visiting www.watertowerresearch.com to stay up to speed on the company's small cap written research reports, podcasts, fireside chats, and conference schedules. We'll see you next time for another edition of the WTR Small Cap Spotlight podcast.